Great, thank you, Mark, and thank you all for joining us today. As Mark said, we're going to be talking about how to maintain the momentum of your health and wellbeing strategy today. So I'm just going to do a short intro, and then I'm going to be speaking to Chris, who's going to share with us some of her experience. So, for many HR teams, achieving budget and buy-in for wellbeing programs can be a challenge. And once you have overcome this, it's really about how to maintain that momentum and demonstrate ROI on what you've achieved. Today we're going to cover 3 areas to consider when implementing a wellbeing strategy and what you can do to keep momentum. So first of all, the first step is really looking at how you can align your wellbeing strategy to your overall strategy. Our research with the CIPD found that 40% of organisations agree or strongly agree that they have a standalone wellbeing strategy in support of a wider organisational strategy. Now this is great, but it does leave about 60% who don't do this. The benefit of aligning your wellbeing strategy to your organisational strategy allows you to ensure that you're really focusing on this as a priority within the business. Sorry, the clicker's not working. Oh, thank you. Wellbeing must be part of a company strategy and their objectives to ensure you get top-level buy-in and to make sure your wellbeing strategy will have the positive impact it needs to launch successfully and keep growing and developing. So once you've aligned it with your strategy, you need to ensure that it's at the centre of your company culture. So 2 in 5 organisations say that the health and wellbeing activity has achieved a healthier and more inclusive culture over the last 12 months. Embedding wellbeing into a company culture means employees will recognise the value of looking after their own health and wellbeing, as well as proactively seeking opportunities to improve their health and wellbeing outside of work. Thank you. They will also help to understand how their own wellbeing is important to the business and really build on that psychological relationship between the employee and the employer. By ensuring your health and wellbeing strategy is integrated into the organisation's culture, leadership and management practices, you will be able to evidence the value of such initiatives when demonstrating a return on investment. Now, all this is fantastic, but communication plays a real key part in this. It's brilliant having a multitude of different benefits within your organisation, but if your employees don't know how to access them and how to use them, they're no use to anyone. We have found that regular communication planned around national health campaigns can be a real benefit in this area. And talk to your providers. They often have the tools and resources to be able to help you with this. You don't have to do it alone. So I'm going to speak to Chris now about some of the things that she's done at Simplyhealth that really brought these 3 features to life. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Where's Boris?
So thank you for joining us today. And some of the things we've discussed, I know you've been focusing on at Simplyhealth. So could you tell us how Simplyhealth have aligned their sort of health and wellbeing objectives to the overall company strategy?
Thanks, Camilla. Yes, I'm happy to do that. Before I get into that question, how many of you are responsible for implementing health and wellbeing policies or strategy? Oh, that's helpful, isn't it? There's quite a few in the room. And of those of you who are, how many of you would you say are fully satisfied with the offering that your company currently provides? Oh, good, be brave. If you are, you are. That's great. We'll talk to you after. How many would say like 5 to 10 out of 10? How many less than 5 but aiming upwards? Okay, so we've got a fair spread. Being totally frank with you, I should be here saying how wonderful Simplyhealth is, and of course it is. I wouldn't have joined otherwise. But when I joined a year ago, the thing that struck me most about the company was that this is a fantastic company who, at its very core, is in the area of health and well-being. And we talk about this to our clients. And what struck me more than anything was that despite that, we had not one person or one clear strategy for health and wellbeing across the business. So it felt like there was a real disconnect between what we were saying in the outside market and what was going on internally. And I believe in being fairly honest about that, because that's where we were. That doesn't mean that people were not committed to health and wellbeing, and it doesn't mean that there weren't a huge number of really enthusiastic people doing things around the business and getting involved. But it didn't join up, and it didn't really represent the company in the way that we want it to. So I took the decision to bring in a health and wellbeing expert. But she's not working solo, she's working still with a number of people across the organisation. And how we've linked it to strategy, our whole strategy is linked up to our purpose. So before we even get into strategy, what do we exist to do? And we exist to improve access to healthcare and to make it easy for the many for the long term. So that tells you that we're all about making easy access for multiple people across multiple borders, and also we're in it for the long term, and that really is quite key to our business strategy. So we don't do initiatives that just make money and then forget about them. We are into things that will deliver value for our employees for the long term. The other thing I noticed when we started this health and wellbeing journey, as it were, is that our customers seem to get a much better deal of things than our employees, or colleagues as we call them. So our strategy is around colleagues, it's around customers, and it's around communities. So I got with our brand director and said, how do we make our colleagues' experience as compelling and as great as we do our customers? And our customer feedback is great, but our employee experience was just, again, not consistent. So I think in looking at how you align with the strategy, the first thing is to get honest about where you are, and the second thing is to start to get consistent and congruent. Why would your employees or your colleagues have a different or a lesser experience than that of your customers? So in trying to align those two together, I think we've brought it under one strategy and one banner. So happy about that.
And I know culture, having worked there myself, is really important to the employees at Simplyhealth and the wider organisation. How have you gone about integrating the health and wellbeing strategy into our culture?
I got really fanatical about the colleague experience when I joined, because going back to the point, our colleagues are the people that face our customers every day. They have a massive impact on the success of the organisation. And so really it was about looking at how we not just launch an initiative, because that's easy to do, and then in 6 months' time everyone's forgotten what you did. It's how you deliberately and very intentionally thread through those health and wellbeing initiatives into the very fabric of your organisation. And that starts even at the point of joining. So, for example, the induction we've just created, somebody's throwing plates next door, it's getting exciting here. So at the induction that we put together for new starters, we make a real point of launching not just in the afternoon our values, the behaviours that we expect, the kind of two-way deal, but we also talk about how employees and colleagues can get access to all manner of health and wellbeing initiatives that are going on, and we signpost them in how to do that. And also we eat our own dog food, as they say. We make sure that every employee has a choice of policy, which is exactly the same as we would provide to our external customers, so people can actually experience firsthand the things that we are talking about in our external customer market. So threading through an induction, and then threading through the various points at which colleagues engage with us. And that could be through raising awareness of national events. We do, wherever possible, try and link that health and wellbeing into what's going on in the wider world. So not only working with local community events, but also where there is we just had recently a mental health week. So making sure that our internal calendar is very clearly aligned. So we'll have a dry January, we'll have various events linked to National No Smoking Day. I think there was something recently about IVF. These are things that touch everyone's lives, and where there is a national campaign that can help to amplify and give a bigger platform to something that you're conducting internally. So I think it's just about looking at, in a very planned and intentional way, how you set out your diary to ensure that you're catching colleagues at a moment where they're also aware of things going on in the wider environment. So that's a couple of the things that we do to engage with that whole strategy.
Brilliant. And you've talked about the calendar and how you align with things like that, but what other sort of communication tools would you use to get the strategy out there?
I'll share what we have done. One of the first people I try and grab or hire is a really good internal comms colleague, and we were fortunate enough to have some internal comms resource, and we've purposed that within the HR team at making sure we've got planned and regular communications. And again, that's a variety of channels. Some people love to read the intranet and our Simply. You see, I'm calling it intranet. I don't know if that's the right word because I'm old school. I like people to talk to me about what they're doing. I'm the last person that's going to go and log on Simply, but a large percentage of my younger colleagues will do that because that's the way they live. So we use the digital channels. We found that to launch awareness of particular schemes, we have digi-screens, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but it's the same kind of screens that sort of refresh and renew, the same as you'd see at a bus shelter, those sort of moving adverts. So we'll use that to target and raise awareness of particular initiatives that we are running. We recently run a Know Your Risk for diabetes, so we also partner with other organisations to make sure that we raise awareness that way. So, regular emails, making sure that our chief exec and our executive colleagues are reinforcing that through their own team communications. And we'll use, also importantly, it's not just about push communications, but it's about listening and evolving what you're doing in light of what your colleagues are telling you. So we'll seek feedback. In fact, we've just moved, if you thought quarterly surveys were a bit of a pain, we've just moved to a monthly survey, but it's a very light touch point where we can quickly, tack and tailor our approach depending on what is top of mind with our employee population in that month. So a range of events, a range of communication styles to support what we're doing. We're not there yet. I'm not sitting here saying we've got it all right, we're perfect. We are continually learning, and we'll be continually learning if we come back in years to come. So,
Great. Thanks, Chris.